Sound Cartel.
Labor's first budget since winning office was delivered by Treasurer Jim Chalmers last week. Plenty has been said and written about it being cautious and pragmatic. But what about superannuation? Should we be concerned? From Sound Cartel, I'm Nicole Goodman, and this is Business Essentials Daily. There weren't any new announcements on super, but current matters were confirmed, according to Michael Jones, tax specialist and partner at Mazars. The most interesting point for Michael in the budget was not directly super-related, but an underlying message that tax revenue will need to increase in the next couple of years. It leaves the question hanging, will this have any future impact on super? Later, Michael discusses how older self-managed super fund members can prepare their fund balances to manage tax today and for future changes. Other super-related items that caught Michael's attention included the residency of SMSF members when they go to live overseas, and no arm's-length income and expenses in an SMSF. Also, as Michael explains to Chris Ashmore, another item worth noting relates to downsizer contributions.
A downsizer contribution happens when you sell your house and you do a one-off after-tax contribution into super of up to $300,000 from the proceeds of selling your home. Now, what this was in the budget for was because the minimum age from which you can do a downsizer will be reduced from 60 to 55. Now, these are really interesting contributions. For example, if you're a couple, both members as a couple can contribute. And these contributions don't count towards non-concessional contribution caps. So I think they're really interesting. Now, the change from 60 to 55 had already been announced and introduced by the former government. This is really just saying it's confirmation. And the legislation's well progressed, and I'm confident that we'll see this happening in the current financial year. But just a reminder, because they're interesting for people to think about. At the moment, if you're over 60 and soon to be over 55, you can make these contributions no matter how much you have in super. And it doesn't matter how old you are, as long as you're over 55. I will note, though, that timing sequence is important. And so I really encourage anyone who's thinking about this to get advice.
What other items were outlined in the budget in regard to super, Michael?
Well, the other change that was in the budget that I thought of interest was to do with the residency of self-managed super funds when members move overseas. So when you go overseas as a member, it gives you problems with the residency of a self-managed super fund, and even goes to the heart of whether you're a authorised superannuation fund or not. There is an existing safe harbour rule which allows you to, if you're going overseas temporarily, to still be involved with your super fund for 2 years. But there are problems with this rule, and it's a bit clumsy. Now, the previous government had two really helpful changes in relation to this area. One was it extended that safe harbour for 5 years, and it also proposed removing a test called the active member test, which I won't go into the detail, but rest assured it's helpful to remove that test if you're in this position. So in the budget, the new government's confirmed its support of the changes, but it also noted that it's going to defer the start date for some reason, and it's likely to be some time away. So again, good news, but disappointing that we don't know when it's going to start. Basically, though, if you're a self-managed super fund member and moving overseas, you should get advice. Another thing that comes to mind is that there was nothing in the budget about non-arm's length income and non-arm's length expenses in super funds. This is a real hotspot, right? Because these rules apply significant tax penalties, whereas super funds' income and expenses are not at arm's length. Parts of these rules are really contentious, and the previous government, agreed that there were unintended consequences and that they would produce the legislation to fix the issues. But now with the new government, there's no news on any legislative changes in the budget, and so that's a bit of a worry. Again, if you've got related party transactions in your self-managed super fund, you need to carefully review how those transactions are valued.
Well, let's move on to the second topic, Michael, how older SMSF members can prepare their funds to manage tax under today's rules, but I suppose also keeping in mind any future changes.
Yes, look, this whole thought is really grounded in that key message from this budget is that how this is just the first budget of a series of budgets and it's engaging in a conversation with the Australian people, etc., etc. And all this tells you clearly that they want to bring changes and raise taxes, and that's okay. But although it's not specifically mentioned, we have to be conscious that I think super is definitely on the radar, and self-managed super funds perhaps in particular. I should emphasise there's no need to get overexcited, but I think it's prudent for members to review and understand the tax aspects of their superannuation balances, and they can make some improvements in many circumstances.
So what do you suggest?
Okay, so look, I'll give you a little bit more background. Most superannuation fund balances are made up of two components, a taxable component and a tax-free component. Now, the tax-free components really represent after-tax contributions made by members from their savings. And look, broadly speaking, the taxable component of your super balance is everything else. Now, as the name suggests, tax-free balances are preferred over taxable balances. The suggestion I want to raise today, it's all about how older super fund members can make re-contributions into super. Now, re-contributions are pretty simple. There's two steps. They happen when someone takes money out of their superannuation account and then they put that money back in again. So it's the same amount of money that's in the super fund, but using these two steps, you can convert a taxable component of your superannuation savings into a tax-free component. This is not a new idea at all, but these days it's of extra interest. And this is because there's been recent changes that allow members to make significant after-tax contributions up until the age of 75. And then even at 75, they can use a bring forward rules. So that's really extending the period in which older members can make contributions quite significantly. Previously, most contributions were only possible after 67 years of age if you satisfied a work test. There's still limits, okay? Not everyone will be able to make these contributions, but certainly far more people can now do re-contributions and do so multiple times over a longer time frame. Another thing that makes it of interest is that the increasing consumer price index, that'll lead to an increase in the transfer balance cap on 1 July 2023, the next time that's set. You know, we're expecting it to be $1.8 million at least, and this will also enable a benefit from re-contributing. Again, think about the downsizer contributions, which can be made even after 75 years of age and enable significant amounts to be put into super.
What are the benefits of re-contributions?
Chris, the mechanics you'd have to go through with your advisor, but just high level, let me just consider a few of the benefits. As a broad principle, look, you're better off having the highest possible portion of your super benefit tax-free. But there are some specific benefits that I'll run through now. The key one is that what happens on death. So if you die and your spouse inherits the super balance, well, that'll be tax-free. But for most of the time, at somewhere, an adult child is going to inherit their parents' super balance. And when they do, they'll pay tax on the taxable components of that super balance, but they won't pay tax on the tax-free components. So you can see there how having a high tax-free component is beneficial. It's also the case that when you have, two partners in a super fund, it's good to equalise the balance between the two partners. So in this way, you can pull out of super from one partner and contribute in from another. So basically, having an equal balance between spouses helps maximise the amount of your super savings that can be held in a tax-exempt pension mode. And it also maximises the amount that can be retained in super when one spouse dies. But more generally, whatever the future may bring in terms of tax changes, it's most likely that the changes will not tax the tax-free component of your super, because this is basically contributions from your after-tax savings. So in preparation for whatever may happen in the next few budgets, consider how you can maximise your tax-free components of your super fund.
Well, we've gone over a lot of topics today, Michael, but if any of these topics are relevant to those listening, what should they do?
Contact your advisor. You'll benefit from an intelligent discussion, and it's good to talk about those things. For me, number one, though, is consider right now if it's appropriate for you to do recontributions and change the tax character of your superannuation.
That was Michael Jones, tax specialist and partner at Mazars. This episode of Business Essentials Daily is produced by the team at Sound Cartel. Thanks for listening. I'm Nicole Goodman. We'll bring you more Be Daily tomorrow. Follow @BE Daily Podcast across social media and head to bedaily.com.au for more from the Business Essentials Daily podcast.
Sound